man who has become the familiar face of policing the police in Nova Scotia for the past 5.5 years is heading west. As the first executive director, Ron MacDonald launched the Serious Incident Response Team and has really shaped its mission and its structure. And since 2012, he's investigated more than 120 serious incidents arising from the actions of police. But he's leaving this job in October for a similar position in British Columbia, where he will lead the Independent Investigations Office. Ron MacDonald is with us here tonight. It's good of you to come.
Thank you very much, Steve. Good to be here.
I want to talk about the job you're leaving and the job you're taking, but I have to begin by asking about the latest case which is on your desk at the moment, the incident in Tatamagouche, in which a murder suspect, he's now been charged, was shot by police officers. What more have you been able to find out about that than we might know?
Yeah, not too much more than what we learned yesterday. You're giving me information. I hadn't realized he had been charged. But it's a case with some complexity, given that it involves a homicide that led into the shooting with the police. And so we're still going through the information.
You are a hands-on investigator. You've never ever stopped investigating. You were at the crime scene yourself yesterday. You appear to have become involved in this very, very quickly, this case.
This case we were involved in it quickly. To be fair to the RCMP, they contacted us even before they had the gentleman removed from the truck. So I am pretty hands-on. I don't do the actual investigation. My investigators do that, but I do tend to go to scenes where there is a death.
How many of the cases that you've investigated, more than 120 now, have been the result of your own initiative or the initiative of Sirt, as opposed to a complaint or a reference from a police agency?
Yeah, we're actually up. I did recheck those numbers. We're actually at 147 investigations.
Wow.
We haven't had that many that have come from the public directly, but we definitely have had some, and that's one of the strengths, I believe, of Sirt, is that we're able to take calls from the public and initiate investigations on our own instead of relying solely on referrals from the police agencies.
But what percentage of the calls you might get from the public would ever lead to an investigation?
What percentage? Actually quite a small percentage. Most of the calls we get from the public are a little misdirected. They go towards perhaps more misconduct issues, and those are for the Police Complaints Commission. So, but there have been a few significant cases, one including a sexual assault allegation that led to charges in a trial.
As you've pointed out, after 5.5 years, the Sirt has become well known, well accepted part of the justice system. That probably accounts for why people are calling you, even with material that maybe isn't in your jurisdiction.
Yeah, there's no question. We like to be public about what we do, and that has certainly allowed people to understand that it's a number they can call when they have an issue with police. Now, as it turns out, it isn't always for our mandate, but we refer them to the right place.
Have you ever stopped to consider who people might have been calling and where police agencies were going before Sirt? Given the number of cases?
I think you asked me that question 6 years ago when I first sat on this, or a similar question.
I did. That's why I'm asking again.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have stopped to consider that, and at this point I can say, I think it's fair to say that there are some of those calls that would never have been made. I believe that, for example, the one sexual assault case I referred to, it was a few years ago, would never have been made. I know from dealing with that victim that she never would have made that call had it not been for the existence of Sirt.
So in a sense, some justice was not done.
That's very possible. I mean, of course, we can't necessarily say, but that's very possible.
This is a difficult one to answer, but I must ask it. What would you consider to be your most significant case of the 147, perhaps in terms of its impact on the general public?
Oh, it's so hard to identify just one. I like to say that it's been them all, because no matter how small, whenever you have a case that involves serious injury or death, it can really compromise the public's interest and their confidence in police. So every case we take on is important. I mean, we've had a few. We have the charges against Staff Sergeant Craig Burnett involving the theft of cocaine. We had my review of the Clayton Miller case, which
the family's still not happy with, as you well know.
Family is still not happy with, but which I believe we've told the public of Nova Scotia the real story there. So those are a few of them, but every case is important.
You must feel sorry for the Millers, though. I mean, they're very earnest people. They've been trying to get what they believe is justice for many years. They still haven't got it.
Unfortunately, yes, it is an unfortunate story. I have seen a pattern over the years like that, where people can become very convinced of certain things that actually don't match the facts that we know of. But you're right, you have to feel compassion for those persons.
Sirt is still a very small unit. There's you and a handful of others.
Yes.
You've spoken in the past in your annual reports about the strain on your resources. I want to ask you, and I hope you're able to answer as you now leave the job, does Sirt have the people and the budget it needs to do this job as it should be done?
I think, based on the model that we intended, it has the right number of people. You might, I think there could be good consideration given to whether or not it should be a unit that has 2 full-time and 2 seconded officers. That might be a discussion that could be had. There may be a room for a discussion down the road, for example, of hiring on another investigator who has some forensic experience.
You'll have 28 investigators in BC.
Yeah, 28 investigators and almost as many more staff, quite a bit more in the way of resourcing.
The government said you're retiring. Are you retiring?
Well, I'm retiring from the public service in Nova Scotia, but I'm not retiring. I'm just moving to something that's probably going to be even busier.
Yeah. So do you get to collect a pension and a paycheck for a while?
Well, those are personal details, but people can probably figure that out for themselves.
Did you apply for the job out west, or did they come after you?
I was approached for that job, and I considered it for some time. You know, I have family here whom that was a consideration.
In Antigonish?
Well, I have family in Antigonish, but I also have children here, so that was a consideration, but eventually after considering it, I was enticed by the challenge of this new job. It's a great professional challenge. I'm very sorry to say goodbye to my team. I have wonderful investigators. Really, you know, they deserve most of the credit for the successes that Sirt has had.
We wish you the very, very best. Hope to see you again soon.
Well, I appreciate that, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
Ron MacDonald, the founding executive director of Nova Scotia Serious Incident Response Team, headed west. Not the first Maritimer to go. Maybe you get back.
Yeah.
We're back in just a moment.